Mr. Stephen Brooks.
Yes.
I feel like I should be welcoming you, but it feels like you're welcoming me to church this afternoon.
Yeah, we call it the Church of Fruit.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, so we only have one rule is every time we say Church of Fruit, everyone, including the people behind the cameras, need to say,
David. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Yeah, and I think so I'm absolutely obsessed with plants in general. If you're going to put a little title under my name, I would often say ethnobotanist, which is the study of the relationship between humans and plants. And I'd say with a focus on fruit. And there's just so many incredible fruits out there. And the ones that we try are pretty much just the ones that have long shelf life. But there's so many. And what's crazy, I've been at this for 30 years and I'm still like, all the time, there's new things coming out. Like, it's like, and the world's so big, and there's like forests in Cameroon and in Sri Lanka and in Madagascar and in Brazil, where literally fruits are still being domesticated and discovered. Exciting times.
And the last time that I saw you before today was at Burning Man, and you were feeding me fruit.
Yes.
Like when you say you're obsessed with fruit, you are. It's a large part of your life.
Well, I think I just like, I guess like a lot of people, like we want to help people to connect with spirit or God or whatever you want to call her. It's like we want people to like feel creation. And, we could do that through, church or mosque or temple, or we could do that through like teachings and writings and pastors and rabbis and, or like what better divine creation to really connect with the divine creation than eating fruit and eating foods that like this earth is making. It's like, and I guess, even to synthesize it more, like my biggest passion is to like help people to deeply fall in love with the earth. And look what the earth's making. I mean, look at these things. Are you kidding me? Incredible. It's just incredible just how this planet is just here to nurture us, and it's like, and even just think about the plant kingdom as we treat this planet so poorly, humans, we're destroying forests and just decimating ecosystems. Yet the plants just keep coming back and just wanting to take care of us, like pure unconditional love.
Yeah, I love that, the idea of falling in love with the earth, because what do you want to protect in life? You want to protect the things that you love.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the first step to wanting to take positive action. Is actually just being aware of that. They
call her Mother Earth. Like, how are we treating our mother? Like, how we treat our mother. Like that. What a deep relationship, to our mother. It's like the thing that gives us all the things for us to live and thrive, and yet it's just like we're doing the opposite. So. Yeah, I feel like fruit is such an incredible vehicle to help people remember this just pure bliss, And, one of my favorite Spanish word is saborear, and that means to savor. And it comes from the root. Sabor means flavor, and saborear is like the verb to take in the flavor, and really with all of our senses, to really find presence, and really taste things with calmness and just, really feel it.
Where does this, you said to me on the way here, you've been on this mission for how long?
30 years.
30 odd years, right? So you've been at this for a long time.
I have.
Where does this come from or stem from you originally?
So I'll mention like a few different little things that have happened. For one, I grew up in Miami, Florida, and my dad was a dentist of an island in the Bahamas. So I used to go back and forth to the Bahamas like almost every other week. And I became obsessed with the ocean. And I had like 600 gallons of fish tanks in my house, all of things that I had caught. And sometimes I'd find the weirdest like shrimps that I don't even know if they had been cataloged before, like weird things I was collecting and raising in fish tanks. So I mean, that was really my first connection to nature, deep connection to nature. Fast forward a little bit, my best friend died in a car accident when I was 20. And that shook me. And it just really, it made me question like, how are we living? It's like, this life is so fragile. How can we ever be doing things that we hate or being in places that are uncomfortable or sad or when life is so fragile. So that really shook me. And then I think the thing that probably pushed me the hardest to fall in love with this earth is I watched a playground full of indigenous children get sprayed by a Chiquita banana crop duster in Costa Rica in 1995. And it totally just like shook me. It was like, emergency brake on my freaking life. Like, how are we doing this? Like, how are we spraying neurotoxic chemicals on these beautiful indigenous people, like indigenous people that have treated the earth like an extension of their bodies for centuries, and we are spraying them with neurotoxic chemicals. Why? So we can have cheap, flawless looking bananas. And then as I started to dig in a little bit, mostly what they're spraying on the bananas are fungicides. And these fungicides are just so these bananas don't get little weird marks on it. It's not even...
Right. So they're not imperfect.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So like as this information started coming in, it was just like, whoa, like, is this really the best we can do, humanity? Like, how is this, in these days now, we can video chat with our family in Australia, or we can like zip around the world on jets, and like, here we are still doing this. And it was just like so shocking. And to the fact that like, I couldn't imagine doing anything else at that point. I was 20 years old, and I was like, I want to dedicate my life to finding another way to design things.
Do you think like humans are fundamentally good?
I do.
Good people? Like that activity that you saw down there was that happening because awareness or education, people just weren't aware that there are other ways of other solutions. There are better ways, as you put it.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that you asked that. I often I think about Montgomery Burns. It's like, I don't think there's like some Montgomery Burns sitting in some office. We're going to spray all the indigenous children with neurotoxic chemicals. I think it's just like a series of circumstance of just, capitalism and, maximize profit and, socioeconomic realities that are just broken, and it's happening across all industry, and bananas is just, it's agricultural industry, at such scale, and it's rooted, it's deep rooted, like, it's 150 years ago, of like where the United Fruit Company first, started actually in Costa Rica. There's a whole story we can go into, but it's sick. And then, and then there was like deep political things in the 50s that have happened in Colombia, and uprisings and Guatemalan government, takeovers where, basically a few families get to decide the way the country are, and these were mostly indigenous people that were living there that were, they were basically enslaving, so it's like, it's just such a broken system. And I think where I think deep down, everyone's good. I really do. I really, I try to, although sometimes it's hard to, to keep that faith, but I do think so. And I think now we're at an interesting time because every single worker has a cell phone and that has a video camera in their pockets. So it's harder to get away with treating, the earth and people and, just environmental, sickness that's going on. You can't really get away with it much longer. So it feels like that's part of why I have so much hope.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think there's reason to have hope. This was something I was having a conversation off air a couple of weeks ago with someone. And
wait, you have conversations off air?
They do happen still. All the things that we can't speak about when the microphones are on.
Oh, you better get a big filter on me,
kidding. And the question, my friend sort of said to me, because I've done quite a lot of advocacy around how you can eat and what nutrition looks like from a more sustainable manner, and spoken about things like climate change, and some of these topics can be pretty heavy if you're thinking about them all the time.
Yeah.
And you can, there's a thing, I'm pretty sure, a diagnosis, climate anxiety, like people suffer from being anxious about what's going to happen to the natural world. And there's real reason, I think, to actually have concerns about what the damage that humans are inflicting on the planet. But coming back to hope, one of the things that I like to remind myself of is if you zoom out, because like this story that you and I are part of, evolution, humanity, like this is a long story. We're probably like right towards the beginning of that story, crazy. Right? So this moment right now is going to be ancient at some point in the future. But when you look at humanity so far, and you look at certain measures of, I guess, progress, we just call it progress.
Good word.
Like let's say, I don't know, education and literacy and infant mortality. Some of these kind of metrics of progress, there's not linear improvement over time, but there is this like non-linear improvement where the world it's getting better, although imperfectly. And it's almost like if you look at a stock chart, like imagine you just go and look at, I don't know, Google, and you zoom in on a 24-hour period.
Right.
You might see a big drop and think, gosh, this is terrible. When you zoom out over 5 or 10 years, you see that it's trended up, and it's had these periods of where it's gone down. And so
I like that metaphor.
It's kind of like this perspective of, you can acknowledge two things. One, that humanity and humans generally are good, even though bad things happen, catastrophic things happen, genocide, like we can all list a bunch of things that have happened historically that are terrible. There has been a non-linear progress to a better world. And so it's an optimistic look, I guess, to kind of acknowledge that there's problems in the world that we want to work on and improve, but it's not necessarily falling off the edge of a cliff kind of mess.
Yeah, just as you're speaking, I'm thinking of, so my day job, I teach permaculture, and we could talk a little bit about that, but the guy that coined the term permaculture is this guy, Bill Mollison, and he has this quote that I love, and it's, as the world's problems become increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. And I really believe that. I think like what sometimes things just seem like so daunting and like overwhelming, like how are we ever gonna, I think when we really just get back to the basics and back to our roots, like what's really important. I feel like COVID kind of shook the world in so many ways where people were starting to question, like, how am I living? Like what's important? Like, what is this? And then everything that's ended and everyone just got back to normal. And
what's important to you?
Yeah, I mean, what's important for me is really just taking care of the people around me and the earth, and connecting with food and connecting with water and taking care of watersheds and creating ecosystems that thrive. I think kind of where my passion lies is in design, like macro human design. How can we merge where we live, where we grow our food, and how we conserve land, and mix that, rather than it be like, okay, all the people live here in the city and the suburb, then the agricultural zone. Oh, and then we have the national park islands, or, it's like, it doesn't need to be so separate. We can merge all of that. And one of the
beautiful things about that is, because now like agriculture is so disconnected from where people live.
Well, because it's so toxic.
Right. But because it's so far away, it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
So when you bring them back together, you're noticing whether these practices are positive or negative, and the impact that they're actually having.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if we're going to keep farming to maximize profit and maximize yield, like, I don't think we don't need to do that. Like there's way more food is thrown away than it's eaten, way more. Like so much of it just gets stored, and like most of the food we're growing is for animals, so it's like, it's so broken. And it's, what it is? It's not just the foods. I mean, all of the systems are so broken, it's like from our healthcare to education system, I was on a call yesterday talking about just like the reality of education. Like it hasn't really evolved in 80 years, it's like we're still teaching the same way that we did 80 years ago, and it's like all of these systems, which they need the world makeover, like everything just needs just such radical, like, let's pause, hit the negative sign on the Google map of our reality, and what are we doing? Like, how have things gotten to be this way? Like, why do we live in a world where we put like chlorine and fluoride in the water that we drink? Chlorine, the same thing we put in our swimming pools to kill everything. We're putting that in our water system. or, neurotoxic chemicals in our food that we eat, or pesticides that kill all life. And then we eat. I mean, it's just like, wow. So I teach permaculture, and often when I'm teaching, and like the first day of the class, I always say, I just want to remind everybody my favorite 3-letter word that starts with a D and ends with an H, and it's duh. It's like all of these things that we're talking about here. It's just like, it's unbelievable that we are in the reality that we are, that like we've gotten so off course.
So with problems that are so complex, like you said, and the answers are simple, how do you go about getting the world to kind of have a mindset shift with regards to a better way of living, how we want to live? Because it would seem to me you need enormous buy-in from a lot of people to have, quote unquote, radical shift versus, more a little bit more patience and slower progress that it might take 50, 100, 150 years.
We don't have that. That's the thing. We need, I love that question, that we need to expedite this radically. And so, I'll kind of give you my plan and where I'm working so hard and where I really have so much faith. I really, really have so much faith. And one thing that gives me so much faith is the fact that I have seen ecosystem regeneration in my lifetime. Like I've seen completely deforested areas that are now forests.
This is in Costa Rica.
It's in Costa Rica. Especially in the tropics, things grow so fast. I mean, don't get me wrong. In areas like in Northern California where they're clearing redwoods, or in, Canada where they're cleaning, temperate forests are a lot slower. But in the tropics, it's incredibly fast to regenerate. And so kind of what I think about a few different things. I think about like how, have religion spread fast, like what are the tactics that happened? Or even something, like a trend, like I'm trying to remember, like Gungo Style. Remember that song? That song like came out of nowhere. And next thing you know,
that song blew up.
It's unbelievable. Like it was the most popular song on earth, like in a month. Like what the hell happened? Like what can we learn from that stupid song? It's like, what the heck? And then the other thing is, look what happened with COVID. It's like all of a sudden the whole world was wearing masks, and all of a sudden the whole world was like following guidelines, so what are the guidelines that we all need to follow to radically shift the course that we're on? And in my time doing this, I've had a few different experiences. I'd say the most profound one that I ever had was I was featured on Netflix on the show Down to Earth with Zac Efron and Darren O'Lean. And the reason was because I know Darren just from being a food collector and nerd. And he called me one day and he was like, Steven, I'm doing this show for Netflix with this child actor, Zac Efron. Honestly, I didn't even know who he was. I was just like, oh, wow, cool. Let me know. And so he called me like 2 months before. He's like, Steven, it's happening. And we want to come film an episode in Costa Rica. So that was in like the summer of 2018. We filmed it October of 2018. And then I kind of forgot about it. They left. Like I realized once it started, like when I was saying, I'm filming the show with Zac Efron, and people were like, what? Zac Efron? And I was like, yeah. And then I started to learn more about him and realized, wow, he's a pretty big deal. Great. Awesome. So we filmed it, and then they left, and I kind of forgot about it because nothing happened. And then I get a call from a friend of mine, July 1st or 2nd, 2020, in the heart of COVID. My friend's like, Steven, I was just watching Netflix and a commercial came on and you're in it. It's like, you did this show with Zac Efron. I was like, yeah. Oh my God, it's coming out next week. No, they didn't like even notify me or anything. Anyway, it came out the next week. And meanwhile, we had just launched, I have a company called Ecovilla. We're doing online courses in permaculture and herbalism and all these things. And then we had just started a new community, which I'll tell you all about that reality. We had started a community in Costa Rica called Alegria Village. And the show came out and it's 30 minutes. And it cracked people open. Like, first of all, remember, it was July of 2020. So it was in the heart of COVID. People were doing nothing but sitting on their couch watching Netflix. And all of a sudden, they're transported to this like magical, beachfront Eden filled with the most beautiful people living on the beach, growing their own food.
And a time where people are also questioning the way that they're living.
Yeah.
And when life resumes, do they want to make changes to what that looks like?
So next thing we know, thousands and thousands and thousands of emails are coming in. My social media is like exploding with people writing me, wow, how do we join? And literally we sold, $20 million worth of lots in the next 6 months. And what does that look like when I say lots, So just to kind of rewind.
Yeah, and live like that. Let's paint a picture of what that means.
So, what that looks like is so we designed these communities with the permaculture philosophy, where we are radically, dedicated to improving ecosystems and radically dedicated to the local people and cultures around us, and really thinking about where our food and our water comes from. So just to kind of rewind, so after the whole banana plantation thing happened, I moved to Costa Rica and I started a tour company bringing high school and college students down to Costa Rica to teach them, that there's another way to do things. But I kind of I did it through their biology teachers. This was in the 90s, long before green was even a color. It was like, there was no even environmental class yet. But there were more environmental biology teachers. So I would go to the National Association of Biology Teachers conferences, and I'd start bringing mass amounts of students. My company blew up because we were really in those days, there was Spanish classes going to Spain. There was French classes going to France. But we had the idea, let's start bringing biology classes down to Costa Rica and show them the rainforest. And then once we got them down to see the rainforest, then we would take them on this journey, this deep journey where they would literally see the reality of the rainforest destruction. They would see the reality of the indigenous cultural decimation. They would see the reality of the multinational industrial agricultural hell.
Was that farming for local produce, or that was being exported, those bananas?
Oh, it's all exported. Yeah, it's all exported.
So you were using tourism as a way of educating,
as a way of and let me rewind a little bit. Of course, we were showing how beautiful the Costa Rica was and how magical, and the rainforest, and just how incredible the country is. But then we were showing this other reality that is always hidden. The tour companies aren't showing that, but we wanted to show that, and then we wanted to show solutions, and that's where my farm came about. Is we ended up buying 30 acres, which grew to 90 acres. Off the grid on the Caribbean side of Costa Rica, meaning there's no road to get there. And then we started doing a few things. We started growing food. I had an old Jamaican neighbor that lived right there by the seaside. And I lived with him. He died in my arms in 2013.
What was his name?
Patty. Yeah. And Patty
Very cool.
was born, he once, when I met him, he looked at me, he goes, "My cord's buried right out there in the yard, boy." I was like, "What? What'd you say?" "Oh, my cord is buried right out there in the yard." Here he was already gray hair, an old guy when I met him, a 70-year-old guy. And he had been living there, so he really started teaching me a lot. It was I lived right next to the quintessential old man by the sea in an area where it used to be a town of 60 families. He was the last resident of the town. And so I bought the property right next to him. And with the goal is I asked him, I was like, "We want to start bringing students here. And, I want them to see how you're living. I want them to learn about what it might be like to live without a road, without municipal water, without a food store, without electrical lines." And so we started doing that. This was 1996. We bought solar panels and we dug our own wells by hand. And we started building our houses from fallen trees. And we literally had no store, and there was barely even boats to bring stuff in. It was a 2-hour hike. So
how was Patty living?
So Patty was growing all his own food.
He was living off
He was a fisherman. When I first met him, he had a clothesline in front of his house with fish drying in the sun. He always had so much bananas. He mostly ate green bananas and fish almost every day. He ate green bananas and fish and yucca. Those were his staples, but then he had pineapples and he had water apples and he had ackee. You know ackee? Mm-hmm. You ever hear of ackee?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Jamaican fruit. It's amazing. It's a perennial vegetable. It's like scrambled eggs that grows on a tree. So he had all these things growing around his house, and just watching the way he lived, watching the way he observed nature was so profound for me. And I was like, wow, I want to be a bridge to the way he is, and I want to start bringing students here. And so and my company blew up. So we started bringing a lot of students down through this program. We'd go around Costa Rica and have them fall in love with the magic, but then we'd show them all this other kind of dark reality. And then we wanted to send them home with solutions. And so on one hand, we were doing all these physical things, growing food and building and electricity. But then on kind of a spiritual and a socioeconomic side, we were having ritual, like every meal before we'd eat, before lunch and dinner, we would hold hands and we'd look around the circle and we'd give thanks and we would savor, we would saborear el momento, we'd savor the moment, and we would, you know, have sharing circle and we would sing around the fire, and we would, you know, you have to understand these are like, you know, kids from Connecticut, you know, that are coming down, and here they are sitting around a fire, and we'd go to the river and we put mud on our bodies, and we would, you know, pick food together, and we would do it, we make garden beds together, and like people got cracked. It was like a full on like code download for these high school, you know, and
people craving community and connection.
Yeah. No, and just being surrounded. And so we wanted people literally to walk through our portal, kind of like what happens at Burning Man. Like we wanted people to walk through the portal and be like shaken. Whoa, why is everybody so nice? Like, what is this place? I can't even put my finger on what's happening here, but this is, you know, and it also happens when you eat, 85% of your food is coming from 50 meters from where you're cooking it. You know, that's deep revolutionary work, you know, and then all of a sudden you're like holding hands with all the people and you're looking around and everybody's so nice. And our whole staff and our whole crew that lived there were just so caring and like loved their lives, and like the music every night and the music in the kitchen while it was being cooked and the love that was being grown and harvested with, it was like infusing people with something that was just intangible. And I think it happened to Zac Efron when he was there. You know, I think like he was just like, whoa.
Let's talk about a game changer in the world of sleep technology, 8 Sleep and their revolutionary Pod 4 Ultra. While nutrition and exercise get a lot of the limelight, there's no denying that both of these are incredibly hard to do well if we aren't getting a good night's rest. If there's a weak link in my own lifestyle, it's definitely sleep. Those deep 8-hour slumbers are nowhere near as frequent as they used to be. Lately, I've been making a concerted effort to upgrade my sleep. A big part of that included the 8 Sleep Pod 4 Ultra, which is a high-tech mattress cover that transforms your existing bed into a sleep optimization powerhouse. It's equipped with advanced technology for precise temperature regulation, elevation control, and comprehensive biometric tracking. The temperature regulation is my favorite feature. 8 Sleep's autopilot uses machine learning algorithms to analyze your sleep patterns overnight and automatically adjusts the mattress temperature between 55 to 110 degrees to help initiate and maintain sleep, as well as optimize the stage of sleep that you're in. When you wake up, the 8 Sleep app provides you with an overview of your sleep quality and important health metrics like resting heart rate, HRV, and breath rate. Since using the 8 Sleep Pod 4 Ultra, not only do I feel more rested and energetic, but I've also noticed my heart rate overnight has lowered by about 5 beats per minute, a sign of better recovery. Ready to take your sleep and recovery to the next level? Head over to 8sleep.com/theproof and use the code THEPROOF to get $350 off your very own Pod 4 Ultra. The best part is that you still get 30 days to try it at home and return it if you don't like it, but I'm confident you'll keep it. Trust me, your body will thank you for this investment in better sleep. Shipping to many countries worldwide. See details at 8sleep.com/theproof. A lot of people that I've spoken to that know you, one of the first things that they say is, you know, Stephen just has such an incredible ability to bring people together and build community.
Yeah.
Is that something that did you have exposure to that as a child? Or is this something that you had to work on, or you saw someone else modeling it?
Yeah, great question. I came from and I want to really give a lot of credit to this. I came from the freaking Brady Bunch. Like my sister's my best friend. My parents are the most amazing. You were asking me on the way here, it was my dad's 17th time. You're like, was that your dad's first time at Burning Man? And I was like, no, it was his 17th time at Burning Man. So I'm super close with my parents. They have been so supportive and so nurturing. Like where a lot of parents would say, hey, you're crazy, go to law school. Or like, you know, either my dad was like, go do it. Like, yeah, go move to Costa Rica, start an educational tour company. So I think, you know, that's been so... I have so much gratitude for that, you know. And my house was the house where all of my friends came. I mean, my house was so fun. And like those Bimini, those early Bahamas trips, like we would go and we would catch fish, and I'm literally making ceviche on the boat. And then So I think that, and then I moved to Costa Rica literally when I was 20, or 21, I started doing these groups. And so from a very young age, like I was hosting diverse groups of people, and really my like deepest desire was for everybody to feel love and feel care and feel like they belonged and feel like they were home, in a way they never felt before in their lives, and we would create like, kind of like what happens at Burning Man, where you get to the greeters, and you're welcomed into the city, did you have a good experience with the greeters? Yeah. I mean, they're like trained to be the nicest people ever. From the minute you step foot in that city, it's like you are home. And it was so funny because sometimes like random hikers would just walk up from the beach up to our place and there's like, guys in sarongs and beautiful women in bikinis in the kitchen cooking like foods they've never even seen before. And they're like, the hell? And everyone's like, hey, welcome. And it's just like, whoa, what is going on here? What is this place? And I think the goal there was like, we wanted people to arrive and to taste how good it could feel. So you can't imagine going back to any other way. And to this day, like that, I did that for, 25 years. I brought tens of thousands of kids.
Is that Punta Mona?
That's at Punta Mona. Punta Mona was one piece of the journey.
Right.
And the other thing that started happening there is when I got into plants, I started collecting plants and in particular exotic foods. So often we would cook meals where ingredients had never met in the history of humanity. Literally like meals. And another crazy fact is at one time we had 3 Michelin chefs all at the same time at Punta Mona that left their 6-figure, chef jobs to come live in the jungle as a, volunteer or low paid, because they wanted to learn about these ingredients, and see where they came from.
What would you say are, 2 or 3 plants or fruits that people in most Western populations are not exposed to that should try and seek out, whether it's local market or if they're traveling? Like what are the ones that people just have to try?
So one that I'm very excited about, that literally at 8:30 last night, I was transplanting. I had a whole crew at my house last night because I was leaving Costa Rica and I had all these plants that needed to be transplanted. I brought a whole crew to help me. One of them is this nut from the Philippines called pili nuts. Have you heard of it? So pili nuts, it's interesting. There was a big decision in the 50s by Mauna Loa, who was like the big macadamia company in Hawaii. They were choosing between macadamia and pili, what they should plant out in Hawaii. They chose the macadamia because it's kind of rounder and prettier, but the pili nuts are the best. They're like little nuggets of butter. They're from the Philippines. It's a jungle tree. You mostly don't even have to harvest it. You just pick them up off the ground under these 200-foot trees. And they're the most incredible nuts in the world. And then a close relative of the pili nut is called dabai. So the pili nuts have very little flesh and a big nut. The dabai is a relative that has a lot of flesh and a small nut. And the flesh, you take those and you put them in hot water. You're not even boiling water, but hot water, and you let them sit for like 10, 15 minutes in hot water. And they call them Brunei olives. It's like this like creamy olive incredibleness. Another one that I would say to seek out is called safu, or the African butter fruit. Again, these are perennial vegetables.
Yeah, we grow all of these.
We grow all of them. Yeah, we grow all of them. And like what I started in the beginning, we were talking about earlier, is that there is like cutting edge shit. Are we allowed to say shit? There's like cutting edge shit going on right now. And a lot of it's through Facebook groups. Like
we are in church, but it's a different kind of church.
Hallelujah. I'm in these very nerdy Facebook groups. And what's happening in these very nerdy Facebook groups is that there's people from Sri Lanka and from Bangladesh and from Thailand and Brazil and in Israel and in Florida and in Costa Rica and in Panama and in Guatemala and Hawaii. And we're talking and communicating in these Facebook groups. Very nerdy specific. Like I'm in this one group, the Myrtaceae group. You wouldn't even believe the level of nerdiness. Right. But what's happening is
getting right into the weeds.
That really cool things are happening. And we're in an exciting time. And what's weird is, unfortunately, a lot of the people in these groups are often just like white men that collected fruits. They could have collected stamps or cars or baseball cards or but instead they got into tropical fruits. And they're such freaking nerds. And so the most exciting stuff is happening, and it's mostly happening in the backyards of, white men and their families, that are collectors. But if we start harvesting all this information that's happening, harvesting all this that's happening, and we start bringing this, kind of like just like, to refugee camps, and after our Africa trip where we met, we went to Kakuma, which is like one of the largest refugee camps in the world. After Zanzibar,
that's in
the day after my birthday,
Kenya or Sudan?
It's South Sudan border, but on the Kenya side, and there's another one in Uganda called Bidi Bidi that we're right now trying to figure out, bringing all of these genetics that will radically improve people's lives. Like, you think about like a place like Vietnam. So Vietnam got leveled in the 70s in the Vietnam War. Like every bridge, every power plant, like their whole entire reality got just cracked. And then what the government did that's so interesting is they put all of their resources into plant nurseries and grafting fruit trees. And then I remember when I was in Vietnam, there was like, no matter where you were in the cities, there was trucks filled with grafted fruit trees going out. You were on the Mekong River, there was boats filled. You're on tributaries of there's smaller boats filled. You're on back paths, because some of off the Mekong, you get off of the river, and then they're not even roads, they're moped paths. You'd see mopeds with trailers filled with fruit trees. The food systems in Vietnam, people are so dedicated to their food, and the food is fruits are so good, and every yard you go in is just dripping. So there's so much abundance, and that's why Vietnam is high up on the happiness index, because they're eating so many freaking delicious foods.
What did you see in the refugee camp, or what did you learn from that?
Oh man, I learned a lot. It totally broke me, man. It was just first of all, one of the things I learned is that it's kind of like a refugee industrial complex. It's like a business. They're not trying to end it, really. It's just kind of this thing where they're just getting aid, and they're not even allowed to leave. They're not even citizens of any countries. They can't really leave. And it's totally broken. But then there's organizations, we went with this organization called 2.org that my friend Noxon started. You know Noxon?
Haven't met him.
You got to meet him. My friend Noxon started.
He's come up in conversation.
He's amazing. Yeah. So he started this. It's called 2.org, and we went and visited a bunch of their projects. One was this school that's teaching people from the refugee camps how to do tasks that they can do on Upwork. Upwork, that app, and basically edit videos or make websites, things that they could do on their cell phones. And now all of a sudden they're in the middle, and they're getting jobs if they have the
generating
income. Right. So there's hopeful. And I think the craziest thing about my experience in the refugee camp was the smiles and just the hope and just the faith. Meanwhile, almost everyone I met watched their entire families get murdered, literally. And as bad as things were in the refugee camp, where they had come from, whether it was in the Congo or whether it was in South Sudan, was so awful. You went to bed every night in deep fear that you might get murdered. They might come and kill you that night. And here they were. Yeah, it sucked where they were, but it was so much better than where they came from. And then there was just so many projects. Our friends, my other friend, David Satori, maybe you know David Satori, a musician from Dirtwire. And anyway, he is doing these recording studios, and we went and visited one of them. It was just amazing. So much hope. So, I think that what's happening here and the genetics of plants radically make life better. And so that's one avenue. We have a nonprofit now where we're literally planting, setting up these nurseries so that literally we could send boxes of plants to Uganda that are going to radically improve people's lives. And I think something that might be interesting is just to talk about permaculture for a second. So permaculture is an ecological design philosophy. And it's about how can we meet our goals and use less energy. On a really basic level, what are our goals? We want to, most people have the same goals. They want to eat well, they want to feel loved, they want to feel safe, they want to, be surrounded by family or friends, and that's really all of our goals. And so how can we do that and use less energy? And when I say energy, what do I mean? We have a certain amount of physical energy, we have a certain amount of mental energy, we have a certain amount of financial energy, and often we're moving through life, thinking about those energies, subconsciously. And then where permaculture comes in is how can we do that and use less of the planet's energy, less non-renewable resources, less, fossil fuels. And so this idea of, feeding all of these people that are just like in such horrible, and what you can see what's happening with our climate right now, and just all of the climate refugees that we're about to have. Like, how can we get organized and prepared? Because it's not a lack of land. There's so much land. You drive across America, or you drove recently across to Europe. There's so much land. It's just being poorly designed.
Right. I think I've seen it modeled out that, we've turned Earth into a farm. It's just not the best
farm. Annual farm. So that's why I wanted to just talk about this for a minute, because there's two basic kind of lines of growing food. There's annual crops and there's perennial crops. So annual crops, as you know, are things like tomatoes or cucumbers or melons or rice or corn or beans, or squash, things that you plant, they grow for 2-4 months, flower, fruit, die, all in one season.
Right. Plow again, start again.
Fertilize and grow again. Now, where perennial foods come in is you plant a system, and what happens? It just keeps giving. My neighbor Patty used to say, boy, if you plan things right, all you do is reap. If you plan things right, all you do is reap. And Bill Mollison from Permaculture, he used to say, if you design things right, you want to design things right so you can maximize hammock time. And when I say hammock time, that's just energy efficiency. It means that like you don't have to do all the things. You could sit in the hammock, or you can play with your kids, or you can play the guitar, because the system's out there working for you. It's food with a lot less energy. And that's why I'm so excited about That's why I'm so excited about perennial vegetables, because you can sit back and it just keeps giving. And there's so many amazing ones.
So why have the big companies, because you mentioned before, like there's these big corporations that they're planting non-perennials, annuals, monocrops. Why are they going down that model if this other model is more fruitful and requires less energy?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I guess you'd have to define fruitful. Is it like financially better? It's like,
I'm just thinking how you take your learnings. Mm-hmm. So when you say like global redesign, mm-hmm. How do you transfer that knowledge and the learnings that you have from a place like Costa Rica to a country like America, where the incentive structure seems to be, just extract as many calories as you can out of land in a short period of time, and not even worry about biodiversity, or don't worry about the state of the land in 10, 15, 20 mm-hmm. years. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of change that structure? Because it would seem to me that the incentives would have to shift.
Well, it's politically so broken. So the incentives, exactly, like agricultural subsidies are the only reason why the annual industry can keep going. Now, as you know, the same foods the same carrots that we're growing now that we grew 50 years ago, like the levels of, vitamins and minerals, it's like nutritional value of food is plummeting. Plummeting. Why? Because sure, you can add things to the soil to make foods, look good so you can sell them, but their chemical makeup is totally different. Why? Because the soil's so bad. So I think if we could start shifting, there's been a trend in diets. This is probably really good for your reality, is that there's been a trend in diets. In the 70s, it was, what's it called?
Atkins.
No, that's even later. In the 70s, it was from Japan, and it was mostly like rice.
Oh, the Okinawan.
No, it was, anyway, there was a trend in the 70s, like the hippies in the 70s. That's what they had, this diet that was like soy. And then in the 80s, everyone became vegetarian. And then in the 90s, they became vegan. And then in the 2000s, it was raw foods. And then it was paleo. And then it was keto, and then everyone's drinking the same raw foodists that wouldn't even go near meat. Now they're just like living on beef bone broth, macrobiotic. That's what I was trying to remember. 70s, it was macrobiotic. Like, if people that were getting healthy, like these early, like Miss Gucci's, which was like the early LA health food store. That's what they were preaching macrobiotic. Now, the fact that that's gone full circle, a lot of these diets are so focused on humans and ourselves and our health. And it's like kind of like so human centric, where if we could start shifting to a more perennial diet, focusing on food. So just to give you some examples, breadfruit. Right now, the amount of potatoes that the United States uses in French fries, and it's all annual crops, potatoes, a lot of energy. Breadfruit, are you familiar with breadfruit? So breadfruit is a fruit, it's like this big. A tree can produce 1,000 of them a year, and it's abundant. And you don't have to do anything. You just harvest. Like Patty said, if you plan things right, all you do is reap. And so I, like one of my really good friends, Paul Zink, is like, he's making right now breadfruit pasta and breadfruit flour, like breadfruit pancake mix. And, you know, and it just takes time.
Is it a knowledge gap? That that these big companies and the people that are informing how they're farming, they don't have that knowledge?
I just think that it's a lot of a trend thing. And the thing is most agriculture is being driven by the big agrochemical companies. And the agrochemical companies are so smart. The way they've done it is they go through the local hardware stores. So the local hardware stores are who sell seed, and they're who sell agricultural products. So they've created trends. And I've seen it firsthand in Costa Rica, like Chiquita Banana comes in and they want people to start growing passion fruit, and they have a way to do it, and they have a monoculture way to do it, and then they sell them the chemicals and they send them off. So it's just a cycle that we need to break. And what we need to do is we need to break this kind of like top down. We need to create these cooperatives where like things like breadfruit, it's happening right now in Costa Rica, where my friend's leading it. And right now he just went to Vietnam and he's doing the same thing in Vietnam with breadfruit. I mean, there's, you know, then in the last 10 years, no one heard of jackfruit 10 years ago. Now, you know, every taco place you go to has jackfruit taco. Jackfruit is a perennial vegetable. It's also a delicious sweet fruit. You get place picture here. We took a great picture of us with the jackfruits earlier. You know, jackfruit, look at the size of that fruit.
What was that place called we went to?
Ranch 99, 99 Ranch. So we were at the Chinese store today, the Asian market, and yeah, they're selling jackfruits that are, you know, 45 pounds. They're this big. I mean,
those some big boys.
And those are green jackfruits still. Those weren't ripe yet. You can cut that up. You know how many people that one fruit would feed? And that tree probably has 30, 40 more fruits just like it on it. So shifting diet, and you asked before, like, how do we do this? And I started to say, like, you know, the perennial diet thing, how can we get people to start doing that? How do we get people to start wearing masks when all of a sudden there was this, you know, sickness called COVID? You know, it's like after the Zac Efron show and I saw all these people, I was like, we need to create more media, you know, and podcasts like you're doing, you know, that are going to shake people, you know? So right now we're working on this television show. It's called The World Makeover. I know it sounds so crazy to even say it. The World Makeover. This isn't like our home makeover or our fashion makeover. This is the world makeover. And one of the important levers we need to hit is the perennial agriculture thing at scale. And there's so many of the greatest foods. Most of them people don't even know yet, which is so crazy, you know? And then we need to break it down. You know, it's like, let's talk about health system. Let's talk about education. Let's talk about architecture and building. You know, let's talk about macro design of the way we're doing things. Let's start creating prototypes that then we could start copy pasting, you know, with cultural sensitivities around the world. And what's cool about what we're doing with the World Makeover is, like, for example, we have friends in Colombia. We just went down there to, and the crazy thing is they're like, you know, famous actresses and influencers who brought us down there to come look at this land with them in Santa Marta, which is near where the Kogi live. The Kogi are this incredible indigenous group that were like one of the last indigenous groups to meet Westerners. And they came out with this film. I remember I saw it when it first happened 20 years ago. It was called Our Elder Brother's Warning. You know, and you see these people and they're just like, their shamans are literally taken at birth to a cave and they don't see the light of day till they're 18. It might sound weird and terrible, but these are deep shamans and deep work, and they live way up in the Sierra Nevada. So it's like the idea of the World Makeover. It's like, let's go learn from them. Like, what's working? Like, what do you recommend for the World Makeover? Let's go to Oroville in India, where literally there's a community that they started, 40 years ago. There's almost 50,000 people that have had their own currency for 20 years. What's working? What can we learn from you? Damanhur in Italy. we went there, we just filmed. It was incredible. Like they have these temples that were so magical. They had these urban centers that were they had a federation of communities. There's another one in Portugal called Tamara, which just like their level of communication and communication styles, like we can learn all the answers are out there. So I think what we need to do is we need to bring on some of these, influencer celebrities, which is already happening. Like it's happening with Zac Efron. And then we go country by country. In India, we know some of the biggest Bollywood actors that we're going to bring in, and we're going to create an entourage, and we're going to traipse around the world, and we're going to learn from people. And then we're going to start creating, macro prototypes at scale.
Right, so you create a blueprint.
Yeah, a blueprint to create the world makeover. And that's why I say it's embarrassingly simple. Like, the financial, inputs to make this happen are so minimal. There's so much money out there just being burned in things that are carbon credits and this and that. It's like, no, we need to, and when I say, what does this world makeover look like? We need to find, and I kind of have like so I guess to rewind a little bit, because I feel like in context, this is important. So I live right now in a community called, it's called Alegria Village. And we actually started 3 neighboring communities. The first one was called Ecovilla. The second one was my 2007 Burning Man camp. It's called Taco Tal. And the third one's called Alegria Village. And right now we're like almost 230 or 40 families from 40 countries living in a valley in Costa Rica where no one would have thought to go and settle. But the reason we chose it is because it has the best climate. The town next to us, National Geographic calls the best climate on earth. We have the most unbelievable, delicious river. So the first thing I did was I created a criteria. What does the criteria look like of our community? When I had the idea, like I sat with my dad, who was so smart. He's like, create a criteria. And so I did that. And so I did. So first I knew I wanted to start in Costa Rica. Very welcome to foreigners, incredible climate. 2, I wanted to be closer to San Jose because Punta Mona was so far. It was a 5-hour car ride and then a 30-minute boat ride. And, I wanted to be closer to San Jose. And I decided I want to be within an hour. And then I said, I want to be somewhere between 400 and 800 meters above sea level because it's this epic edge where you can grow all the deep tropical fruits, but you could also grow a lot of the vegetables because you're high up a little bit. And then I knew that I wanted to be next to a crystal clear river where I can lay naked on a big boulder until I get all hot and crispy and then roll into the crystal clear water and drink it. And then last but not least, I wanted to find land that was already degraded. I don't want to buy a big piece of forest and what am I going to cut it so I can live there? No, I want to find land that's been destroyed through agriculture so I can come in and regenerate it. And so when I think about the model that we're doing, it's called Eterna, is our new project, eternal in Spanish, is we came up with this criteria is like, we want to find this, kind of like the IP here is we want to think about like the percentage breakdown of how we want to approach lands. We want to find large tracts of land that have maybe 75% of it has been radically disturbed. 25% maybe is forested and in some level of regeneration. So the first thing we want to do is we want to radically conserve existing forests. Then we want to reforest, creating biological corridors and protecting watersheds. Then we want to start mass at scale food forests of all of these different species that I was telling you about, all the nerds are collecting. And then we want to merge communities and education. And you know what we need? Fun. So we have festival sites, and art, like what we see at Burning Man, like large scale art merge into our communities. And we start replicating this around the world. So when we go to Colombia, we're learning from the Kogi, but we're also sitting there with our friends that are already trying to do this, and we're helping them and we're supporting them and we're blasting it out to the world through Netflix, and that was the other thing that really blew me away about the Zac Efron show was just the amount of people that reached out from the amount of different countries. It's like all of a sudden I had this like huge fan base in Mexico that I was in Mexico City and decided to do an event 3 days before and 500 people showed up.
What kind of people? Like what are the characteristics of someone who decides I'm gonna leave New York or I'm gonna leave LA and I'm gonna move with my family to Costa Rica? What's the thought process? You just said it right there. What was you said? Move with my what? Family.
That's the biggest key is like most people are incredibly concerned about their kids and their children, you know, and the system that we're living in, it's totally broken, especially the school systems and the education. And so I think a lot of them were families that were starting to question everything. So that's one thing is the children. So I think, yeah, they're just people that were just, you know, unsure.
Are these people that are largely working online?
Almost everyone's working online these days, which is, it was since COVID, that was a really big shift.
Right. Like I'm assuming that part of the thought process is, I mean, I imagine there are a lot of people listening to this and thinking, this sounds ideal, moving to a place like Costa Rica. And then when they weigh it up, some of the things that maybe stop people is, well, what's my income? What am I going to do for work in Costa Rica? How am I going to make that work? As well as maybe safety concerns people have with moving abroad, away from a local area they're used to, whether that's accurate or not.
Yeah, I don't think everybody needs to move to. We need to do this everywhere. Like we need to start, you know, identifying large tracts of land. The reason why I've been like tentative and holding back in the U.S. is so I have this quote that I've been saying a lot. It's like, we could change the world if they'd only give us permits. And who's they? It's like, we are they. Like, where's they to give us permits? Like, everything we're doing is righteous. We're protecting watersheds. We're, you know, creating corridors. We're taking care of local cultures. We're doing all these things right. But yet, you could still get permits to clear cut primary rainforest. You could still get permits to create plantations that are spraying neurotoxic chemicals on indigenous children. You could still get permits for all that, but we can't. So here in the US, it's become really hard, the permitting, you know. So the reason why I've started in Costa Rica, because that's a lot. It's still hard, but it's a lot more manageable. But I think we can do it here too. Like I'm learning now that there's people there's people listening, you know, there's people. I have a friend, Sam, who just bought a big property north of LA in Fillmore. You know where that is? It's like, it's north of here. And he was telling me that, yeah, he's becoming really close with the mayor and he's now sitting on the city council and he bought this property and this whole idea of agricultural tourism. I mean, think about Italy. Like so much of the tourism is based on like, you know, wine and olive oil. And it's like, man, California grows more food than anywhere. You know, it's like we could do the most incredible agricultural tourism. So like how shifting the mindset, you know, it's like, that's why I don't think anybody's evil. It's like, I think it's all how we present these ideas. So our communities are thriving. Like we had 2 schools, they just merged into one. We have like 120 kids in the school. And it's really just like, and the parents are very involved, not only in the creation of the school, but they're also part of they have to be re-educated also. So there's like whole groups of like the parents are just trying to unlearn the broken system that they came from. And, you know, I was just with a family the other day. They're from like Rochester, New York. And the father was, you know, was successful and was like, yeah, we got to get out of the US. And what you find is people are trying to take care of their children. But the other hard part is, how do we take care of our old parents? What, are we going to just send them off to the old age home? It's like any of these things that if we try to do it on our own, we can't do it. You know, so what do we end up doing? We send the kid to the best possible school. If we can afford the expensive private school, which is incredibly expensive, then we do that. Otherwise, we just send them to the best possible public school that we can. What do we do with our parents? We send them to the best option of old age homes. But now all of a sudden, we're 200 families. We can create our own school. We can create our own new kind of holistic old age home and take care of our elders in a whole different way where they're right alongside the children. Like, that's when I'm talking about a world makeover. See what I'm saying? There's so many little pieces, but aren't I making it sound relatively simple?
Right. Yeah. It sounds beautiful and it sounds simple. I think the part that I find hard to get my brain around is, how do you translate that to a city like New York? And maybe that's not even the right way of even thinking about this. Yeah. It's just showing the world what's possible.
I'm going to give you an example.
As a beginning.
I'm going to give you an example. So one of my dad's friends growing up was this woman, Cheryl. And I remember, I'll never forget this. She lived in South Beach, right off the beach in a house, just like off of South Beach. And for 20 years, she was fighting like the city commissioner to plant flowering trees on the roadside in her neighborhood. 20 years. to try to change the existing reality is going to be so hard because it's so ingrained in bureaucracy. It's so ingrained in the way things have always been done. There's so much empty land. And I'm not saying that we don't still need people in the city doing their thing, trying to change things. It's really hard and it's really taxing. I think we need to create a whole new way of creating cities and the whole new way of designing agriculture and designing land use and designing the water systems and designing septic systems, all the solutions we have. Like, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like, people are figuring these things out all around the world. We need to bring these ideas together. And that's where the show comes in, is we need this world makeover. So we just purchased a property. And one the other thing that I think that maybe people that are listening are questioning is like, how does this all get funded? So in the past, the way we've done it is we've raised money from investors, and that's a little asterisk next to it. It's like most of our investors are really cool. They go to Burning Man and they drink ayahuasca and they're like super conscious. Yet, often if you end up on their phone with their family office, or you're on the phone with, them, and it's like they want to maximize profit. So the bigger profit your investor needs to make, either the more expensive the lots are going to be, or the more lots you're going to have to pack in so you can meet your ROI. You know what I'm saying? Now, we know there's so much money out there. Like, if we could start, and right now it's totally divided, kind of like the way land use is: farming here, living here, protecting here. It's the same way people are with their money. We're going to invest in high return investments, and then we're going to donate $1 million to the World Wildlife Fund.
So what you're saying is, if the mindset is to maximize profits, it could come at the cost of regeneration?
It is. I mean, that's
the global mindset.
That's the global
so
problem.
Brings us back to the agriculture in this country.
Right.
So what's your mindset then?
I mean, my mindset is there's so much wealth. My dad used to say, when he was a kid, if you were rich, you were old. Not anymore. Not anymore. I mean, as you know, like, we're like the people that I'm seeing, and it's interesting right now, even like what I've been doing all these years, like the wealth that I'm seeing around me, even the party that we saw each other at that night at Burning Man, the wealth at that party, it's like, and like I'm saying, this isn't billions of dollars to do, there's so much money out there just swirling, these are regenerative financial products, it's like, they don't need to keep infusing money into it. It's like, we can create that regeneration, and before you use the word sustainable, that's like a word we just need to get out of our our reality. If I say, hey, how are you and Tawny doing? I'd be like, oh yeah, we're sustainable. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I know some really great relationship coaches. Sustainable is just getting by. You don't want to just get by. We want to thrive. We want to regenerate. We want to make things better. So, and I think what's happening a lot now in the area of wealth is like, people are realizing that where they feel the best is when their investments have impact. Yeah. So I think that is really crucial. And it's interesting, as I'm dancing right now, I was telling you on the way here, it's like, yeah, we're raising money right now, but we're just so careful of where it's coming from, because we really want to, find financial partners that like really understand the magnitude of what we're trying to do here, and that the amount of, and we're not saying we want profits, but astronomical profits that, a lot of, our last project, Alegria, was incredibly successful, incredibly. I mean, we had astronomical returns to our investors. Like, a lot of it was because of the Zac Efron show. It happened so fast. We sold so many lots so fast, and
so it's not that ultimately, I think capitalism is a good thing.
It's a good thing.
It's going to help us find the solutions to create a better world and scale them. Mm-hmm. Right. And so this is still a form of capitalism.
Totally. And I'm not against capitalism.
Right.
I'm just,
but it seems to me that the difference here is, or a key kind of mindset shift, which seems, again, simple, is that being of service and serving people and the planet during our time here is not just something that benefits people decades down the road and humanity down the road, that benefits us today.
Recently, I've been working with friend of the pod, Dr. Will Bolsowitz, on his new brand, 38 Terra, an evidence-based prebiotic supplement to optimize gut health. To facilitate online sales, 38 Terra uses Shopify. The major reason 38 Terra chose Shopify over other e-commerce platforms was because of Shopify's focus on customer conversion. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, up to 36% better compared to other leading e-commerce platforms. If you're going to spend time and money on marketing, you want to make sure you are converting the people who visit your site into loyal customers. What I also love about Shopify is how no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control in-house. The Shopify App Store is home to thousands of customizable apps that can easily plug into your website to help with things like upselling, selling products on social media channels like Instagram and TikTok, and much more. To boost your conversion rate and grow your business, sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/proof. That's shopify.com/proof, all in lowercase.
You even think about these incredibly wealthy people, they're also struggling to figure out how to educate their kids. They're also struggling how to deal with their old parents. It's like, we need to come together and really figure this out. It's not that hard. Like, we could do it, we just have to just start thinking differently and creating models that we can replicate, and I really feel like what we're doing, we're really onto something. That we just bought this property in outside of Nosara, which is on the northwest of Costa Rica, and it's 100 acres on the beach. And what we're doing is we're creating. So I told you I have this company, Ecovilla, which is like this mostly online education. And now we're about to build our first campus. So it's like Ecovilla campus. That's part of the land. We're creating this project called the Modern Monastery, which you're going to love. It's a 28-day program where you can come with your whole family. We got your kids covered. We got programming. There's all the things, yoga and meditation and cold plunges and all the things. And then there's new moon ceremonies and full moon ceremonies. So ritual. There's men's circles and women's circles, which is so important in our lives. There's, light programming throughout the 28 days. You come on the new moon and you leave on the new moon unless you stay on. But there's not people like coming in and out. And you basically go through a program with 50 families where you totally reset your reality. So we're building a couple of these right now, modern monasteries, and that's also happening on the land. Then there's a holistic recording studio happening that I'm partnering with my friend Stephen Gibb, who's the son of Barry Gibb from the Bee Gees, who had struggled really hard with addiction. And we're basically creating this holistic, so there's all of these elements that are happening on the land. There's an event space where we can start hosting events. And then there's homes. There's places where we can live. And this model, this is an interesting model because the land was so expensive because of where it is. But this is all going to start shifting. Like, this is 100 acres. We found a property that we could buy right now that's 5,000 acres in the most incredible climate. It's mostly coffee plantation. So imagine all of a sudden we start creating these communities mixed in with the coffee plantations. People love their coffee. And we think about, it's like, so I have so much faith, and then right now we're Costa Rica. Costa Rica is a relatively expensive country, but it's like Colombia or Sri Lanka or, Thailand, where we can go in and start creating these models, and I like the idea. I think when we create criteria, I think we want to create the balance of local families to foreigners. We have to get really clear. Like, we want, say, 60% local families and 40% foreigners, or whatever we decide on. I think getting clear, that's why I love criteria. The clearer you are on what you want, the better chance you'll make it happen.
Have you met Dan Buettner?
I've been on calls. I haven't met him in person. He was in Nosara recently, and we actually communicated this week. He's in Sardinia right now with my good friend Matt O'Hare.
I feel like your worlds need to
collide.
Him
and John are in Sardinia, I think. I think John Mackey's with him right now. They're biking through Sardinia.
There you go. When you're setting up these communities, what's more difficult, the kind of physical aspect?
No. It's all about the hardest part is the money, dealing with the investors and raising money, hard. Dealing with the bureaucracy, permitting, hard. The rest is easy. Infrastructure, underground electricity, fiber optics, water systems, agriculture system, easy part.
Community
Part is people are crazy.
I imagine that's, I mean, you're creating a dynamic.
Yeah, but we're also at a time right now where like nonviolent communication and communication skills are better than they've ever been. Like facilitation has never been so good, so that doesn't scare me.
Particularly, I have to imagine the type of person that is willing to question the kind of status quo, leave a city and move to Costa Rica. I feel like that person is probably a subset of the population that has a high level of communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more and more. And like in this last, in Alegria, for example, it's 145 families. We had some really difficult ones. And you know what eventually happens is the system just kind of like spits them out. They leave because it wasn't right. And that was also the way that happened because of the Zac Efron show. It happened so fast that we just were like overwhelmed, selling so fast that we couldn't really take the time that it needed. I think we're even learning and getting better. And like, how can we make sure that it's a right fit, from the start, but yeah, I think, in Punta Mona, what we used to do in Punta Mona is we had weekly sharing circles. And can we do this on scale at a 10,000 person community? Yeah, we can have micro communities within there where people are sharing and connecting. And before hard feelings happen and before things get out of hand, there's communication and healing happening. I think there's so much trauma in the world. And I watched it in Alegria, like in the WhatsApp chats. We started these WhatsApp chats probably too early, long before people moved there. And then there's some people behind their computers that are just have so much trauma that it just starts spewing into the WhatsApp group. But I think we're just getting better at it, and we're never done. We haven't figured this out. This is a work in progress, but what we need to do is we need to start at scale designing a different way to interact with land.
Right. Yeah. And I should caveat, I said that I think people in that subset who make the bold decision to move to a place like Costa Rica tend to have a high level of communication. Totally. I'm saying that firstly as someone sitting in LA.
Yeah.
So, but my thought process there is it requires a fair degree of kind of introspection and communication within a family unit to make that decision. And in my experience traveling around the world, and I haven't been to Costa Rica, but I've been to similar places. One thing that tends to kind of be a common thread through these communities is a very openness to just show up as yourself and be fully expressed and to be able to have the hard conversations and resolve conflict, which to me, coming from a Western culture and particularly my family, everything was just always good. There was no conflict.
Right.
So when I said that, I guess I'm speaking more to my experience of the difference that I feel when I go from a city like Melbourne, where I grew up, to then dipping into one of these kind of communities where people have decided there's another way of living.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think things like the modern monastery, which is going to literally like prime people to be ready for it. Like I think this is training, and then like things like Ecoversity, like our classes are deep. Like our permaculture class that we teach online, it's 6 months, and I never really wanted to teach online because I didn't think like the community piece is so important, and it's happening in the Zoom. Like deep connections and love is happening in the Zoom rooms as we learn about because permaculture is such a diverse thing. It's not any one thing. It's about, looking at food systems and water systems and communication systems and economic systems and government, bureaucracy and permitting. And like, we're talking about all the things, and that's where we think about like functional medicine. It's like holistic health. It's like before you got, sick and they just looked at your one thing, they didn't look at your holistic reality. It's like, as we start designing our communities and land coming from this approach of holistic, with thinking about all of these things, we need to understand all of these things and not only understand them, but how are they interrelating, and yeah, I mean, I feel like we're at an exciting time. I feel like it's clear that things are not working. And, I was on a call yesterday for Ecovilla, and like I was hearing my partner who's like really in the day-to-day, and she was just telling me the statistics about, people don't want to go to 4-year college anymore, and like the amount of young people that are like, oh, we want something different, we want to live differently, we want to do things different. Like people are ready. Like we can't trick people anymore.
Are the people that are enrolled in Ecoversity, are they mostly people living in countries like America, and they're taking those learnings and then using them locally?
No, I mean, I would say most of the people are probably from the US, but no, I mean, there's people from like 70 countries. And what's so amazing about the permaculture course in particular is that there's people from 70 countries, and a lot of them own land, and they're starting to we have a class that has 300 people in it. And like that class is affecting 5,000 acres or 8, it's mad. And once you've seen it, you remember that little game, those little Where's Wally? Like once you see Wally, you can't not, it might take you a half hour to find him, but then once you find him, you can't even how did I not see him? That's kind of how permaculture is. It's like, wow. And I warned people the first day, listen, nothing's ever going to be the same. You're not going to be able to go back to the way you used to do things.
What are the big ticket items about permaculture that shock people? The main principles? Yeah,
I mean, I often just say things are the way they are, but they don't need to be that way anymore. Like the fact that you could even, like when I said, when I tell people, basically I'm the co-founder of a town. Like, what? Who the hell starts it's just like, we can radically change this world. Like we can, and we only can do it if we actually we actually believe it's possible. And then when many of us start believing it's possible, then it's just like, and so what's interesting about an Alegria, I'm one of the founders of it. I was kind of like the visionary behind it. And then I have other partners that were, good at finance, and my dad is he's like day to day on it, like making it all happen. But now I'm just a lot owner now. Like I'm not even in a lot of the groups. Like there's whole things happening, actually right now today, there's a whole farm garden thing happening, community garden day happening. And I'm not even there.
That's got to be cool to sit back and see it just evolving and taking shape without you in its own way.
It's been interesting though, because on one hand, it's great. And then on the other hand, there's like people that were kind of mad. Like they're kind of like, disappointed. Like, hey, I thought you were going to be a lot of people like kind of wanted a guru, in some ways, a guru.
You don't want to be the guru?
No. I just want to keep, and I'm off to the next one now. And people are like, what do you mean? We came here because, no. Like I got to keep my role here.
It's less about Stephen Brooks and more about a way of living.
It's exactly. And I'm ready to keep doing it. And I'm going to start this one, and then I'm going to start the next one, and then I'm going to start the next one. And I don't even want to start them. I just kind of want to now, hopefully now what we'll start doing is just supporting people that in other countries that are, and around Costa Rica, this is just basically a model that we just need to keep replicating.
Did I read or hear you guys are using poop to generate electricity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in Ecovilla, all of the septic goes into, it's one of the largest methane digesters in Central America. And it makes methane gas, and you could cook off it. And honestly, we're not using it enough. Like right now it's connected to like a pizza oven that's not used enough, but we could do way better, and unfortunately we did it and we created it. The founders created it, and then the community didn't really kind of keep it going, but we've proven it's possible, and it's just, you think about like a city like New York City, 10 million people. So what would you say, average, like say, want to say one poop a day, say a half a pound? Does that feel good?
Yeah.
One poop, half pound a day. So 10 million people, that's 5
Depends
million,
how much fiber they've been eating.
5 million pounds of poop a day. Just try to close your eyes, everyone listening, and try to imagine what 5 million pounds of poop every day. That is 35 million pounds of poop a week. I mean, it's just astronomical. Like the amount of, and all of that shit could be making methane. And all of that shit is all the nutrients that you just sucked out of the earth. That's just like getting processed and put into plants with chemicals that eventually dumping into those rivers. Like, oh my God, I just cannot believe. And then at the same time, we're burning fossil fuels to heat all those apartments. You see what I'm saying? It's just like bad design. broken design. Like we have all the solutions to fix that. You know, not to mention all the agricultural kind of like massive agricultural production that's happening, all the byproduct, whether it's from coffee or from pineapples or so much byproduct. Bananas, you wouldn't even believe. Like a banana, you cut the whole tree down every time, or plant, it's not even a tree. You cut the whole plant down to harvest a bunch of bananas and you have this stalk. It's 8 feet tall. I mean, so there's so much byproduct that could be fueling methane plants.
Like you say, the solutions are there
for the most part. Simple.
For the most part, they're there.
Most part, they're there.
It's just whether they can be rolled out at scale quick enough in some of these big cities. I think there are some cities in America, like I read Portland, I think, is at least starting to use poop to generate.
I heard that. Well, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. Are you guys using solar power down there? Or?
So Costa Rica is 99% renewable energy. The country's mostly run on hydroelectric. But yeah, most of the houses have solar on them. Costa Rica, again, the bureaucracy, believe it or not, like the eco country of the world, has made it so hard to be able to sell it back. So right now we can't even sell it back. So most people are just either getting like Tesla batteries or they're just generating electricity in the day. But
like electric cars is something that, I mean, you look around LA now, they're everywhere.
I know.
We saw a car as we were pulling in just then without a driver.
I know. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
You know, so there are signs that the world's certainly changing.
Yeah. Totally.
Albeit, you know, possibly not fast enough in certain areas. Back to that point you made about the community not sort of looking after that the power solution, the methane ingester. Is that one of the challenges when you set up something like an establishment like this, you know, roles and responsibilities, or is it each lot is kind of just looking after their own?
I think I own responsibility that we needed to take it further as the developers. You know, we kind of like set it up and just thought that the community would take it over. Oh, there's all the methane here. Now you guys could choose on how to use it, but it didn't happen. I remember a few HOA meetings ago, I tried to get like a $5,000 budget from the HOA to do further investigation, to get the ovens ready and like even get local women or men to make, you know, bread, you know, start a bakery that was running off of, and it didn't get approved actually, you know? So I take responsibility. You know, I think we could have taken it a little farther, you know, but we're like a small, you know, very underfunded group, you know, like we're ready to start, we're going to do this at scale. And that's where the TV show comes in. Like, I really feel like the World Makeover is going to have such a big part in fueling, you know, this global movement. Because I often say it's not a TV show. It's literally a revolution, you know, and it's like, how can we get people to buy in? You know, it's like at the end of the show, like we need to be able to say, oh, you live in Colombia. Yeah, dial, you know, go to www.eterna.colombia, you know, .co and these are your options. Like we've already have, you know, 10 land projects started. We have, you know, this line of food products ready for you. You want all these things that you want, we're ready to support you in this transition. And that's what the key word here is. Like we could dedicate this episode, Simon, to the word transition. How can we gracefully transition from the way things were to the way we know they can be, you know? And
what can someone do, or, you know, a few things that maybe someone can do to be a part of that transition that is living in an urban environment, you know, big city like a New York or a Sydney wants to be involved, but perhaps can't move away from that location.
So a couple of things right away, I'd say start a garden, whether it's on your roof or whether it's at a park, whether it's at the community garden, whether you have a small backyard, whether you know somebody that has a small garden, start a garden. Second thing is go to your farmer's market, join a CSA, learn 5 of your farmers' names, like that's why when you said, before I was going, go to the farmer's market, find my friend Stephen Murray, you know, go to, you know, 7 Hot Dates, you know, go meet the people at your farmers markets. And if you can, go and visit their farms and see where your food is coming from, you know, and understand it and look them in the eyes. And like, that's revolutionary. It sounds so crazy and simple. I would say cancel your Amazon Prime, even though I ordered a couple things to your house today. I don't do it very often, but
Hypocrite.
or it's my vitamins, cancel your Amazon Prime. Like, stop buying things as well. It's not stop. We're not getting judgmental here, but like, try not to buy things from people that you don't know. Try to support people in your community. Try to support people that that are creating products. Like, you have to buy a wedding present, buy an album from a musician friend that or buy join a Patreon of a musician that or for your friend, or buy on Etsy from some friend of yours that's making some cool something, I think that is radical, and it's simple if you're living in a city. The other thing I do is try to make a 10-year plan, Like, where are you living your ideal life? Because so many times people are living miserably. They hate their job. They hate their marriage. They don't like where they live. It's like, what do you have to, what do you like to do? Do it more. What don't you like to do?
But it's so easy, Stephen, to distract ourselves so we never have to ask the hard questions, right? Watch Netflix, play games, scroll on my phone. I don't have to check in with myself. So my life is just what it is. But essentially what you're talking about is awareness.
Yeah, and you know what? Right here is a vehicle of and that's why I'm like so excited about the fruits, and that's why I'm an ethnobotanist, but I'm also the pastor of the Church of Fruit.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. There we go. We got him, Dave.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I feel like the fruits are so.
What's your favorite fruit?
My favorite fruit today is a tie between meringue and champedek, and they're both in the same family.
Meringue and
champedek. So the family is Moraceae. Moraceae family is the family of mulberries, also of figs, also of breadfruit, also of jackfruit. The genus under the family Moraceae is Artocarpus. Artocarpus is breadfruit, jackfruit, bread nut, petali, meringue, champedek. I can go on and on. Keladang. I can go on and on. Artocarpus is the most exciting family. So as you know, the jackfruit, obviously you can eat them green in tacos. Mm-hmm. You can eat them ripe. It's like where juicy fruit got. Have you had ripe? I fed you ripe jackfruit at Burning Man. Yeah.
Are jackfruit related at all to durian?
No, they're not even related.
Okay.
They're not even related. So you can eat them green like a vegetable, ripe like a fruit. The seeds are a high protein nut. Delicious nuts, like a creamy nut. Creamy nut. I don't know. The sap you can use like glue. I mean, it's just one of the most amazing versatile. You can also dye robes, like Thai robes. Those yellow robes are dyed with jackfruit sap. Wood you can
just
make
quickly.
furniture.
I was laughing at that creamy nut comment because I had a guest on the show, and he's a doctor and he's quite a serious guy.
Like me.
Not saying that in an offensive way at all. He's a serious, matter-of-fact person. And we were talking about how you can soak nuts in water, right? Kind of activate them. And I asked him, I said, do you soak your nuts? And he goes, oh no, I just use soap and water.
That's funny.
Yeah, and coming from this very serious doctor, it was quite the laugh.
So yeah, I mean, I'm really excited. So in that family genus, Artocarpus, is two fruits. One is called meringue, and it's native to Borneo. But I've seen them in Bali, but you wouldn't know them unless you like really sought them out. And they're these they look like they're like this round. They have like this really Velcro-y skin, really cool skin. And you open them up and there's these little white polyps. Anybody out there, take a moment and Google meringue, or in Indonesia, they call them tarap, T-A-R-A-P. And they're these little like white polyps, and they just like, yes, those are them. Look at those little white polyps. You put those in your mouth and it just like bursts the most unfreaking believable flavor you can ever imagine. And then champedek, you can look that up. It's CEMPEDEK. Edek, Chumpadek. And it looks like a small jackfruit. And the flavor is just orgasmic. I mean, it's just, those are Chumpadeks. Looks like a smaller jackfruit, but the flavor is so strong. It's so sweet. The consistency is unbelievable.
The meringue fruit on the inside kind of resembles mango seed.
A little bit. Yeah, it looks not relative, but
okay.
But it's so good. Oh my goodness.
I think mangosteen might be my favorite fruit.
Yeah,
or these rambutan.
These are rambutan. And we can dig in. Let's dig in. Let's start with this one right here. This is a really unique one. It's called canistel or egg fruit.
Kind of on the outside looks like a pear that you've had for too long.
Yeah, these are these grew in the rainy season. We get them throughout the year. So when you get them in the rainy season, they get kind of dark on the outside. But here, take that. And the way I describe it is it tastes kind of like hard-boiled egg yolk consistency, kind of infused with like sugar, and so good. This is the family of Sapotaceae. Mamey zapote. Some people know mamey from Mexico. In a smoothie, it's like one of the best smoothies.
I like that.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
Kind of the texture of sweet potato.
Mm-hmm. It's so good. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And now the next one I'm going to show you
is that from Costa Rica?
That's it's native. It's actually native to Costa Rica all the way up through Central America into Mexico, Belize, Caribbean islands.
How do you feel about seed smuggling? Is that a good thing, bad thing, indifferent?
I feel really good about it. Yeah, I feel really good about it. I mean...
And what is seed smuggling? That came from Bear, by the way. I spoke to Bear before this conversation.
Oh, really?
He said, ask Stephen about seed smuggling.
Oh, yeah. I met Bear at Punta Mona. He showed up at Punta Mona one time. I feel like it's amazing. It's like, a lot of people get this trigger where they'll start thinking about, invasive plants. We know the plants that are invasive. We know these plants intimately that we're moving the seeds around on. Often they're hard to grow, let alone invasive. And yeah, I wish it wasn't I wish it was easier to move seeds around. They made it incredibly difficult. It's actually in the U.S. it's gotten easier. I bring most of the seeds in legally now to the U.S. through the USDA, bringing them from Borneo, from Cameroon, Africa. There's some exciting, you see my face light up when I talk about it because they're so exciting. I have this seed that's sprouting right now at my house that's called Annona salzmani. A lot of things I've never even eaten. Like these are fresh out of first time being domesticated. And
how do you kind of work out, and I'm sure this comes back to permaculture, but how do you work out that plant's going to be like additive to the ecosystem?
Well, you have to understand where it came from. And you have to understand the family, and you have to understand often when we're designing and we're talking about plants, you want to think about what is the space they're going to take up over time and what's next to it and what space is that going to take up over time. So we're kind of stacking these plants, knowing what they're going to do over time. Hold this little bottom. You know what this is?
I've never had this.
You've had it actually a lot, probably when you were a kid. First in Worcestershire sauce. It's the main ingredient, Worcestershire sauce. And then in every pad thai you've ever had, it's in there.
Wow.
In Mexico, it's more like a candy.
Is there a little seed in there?
There's three seeds in it. And
like
before you eat it, I just want to tell you, in permaculture, one of the principles is we like to stack functions. So this is not only one of the most delicious fruits in the world, it makes a really salty sauce, like in pad thai, or it makes like a sour chutney, or it's used like in a sweet candy. This is a sweet variety that was selected. Now, this, as you can see, it's almost like a bean pod. So that makes it a nitrogen fixing plant. We first started saying hallelujah around nitrogen fixing plants. Let me take a moment and explain to you, Simon. This is exciting. This isn't like an act. I'm truly excited, and I think I'm going to contage you with it right now. Are you ready? Are you ready to be contaged?
I am.
So when we think about nitrogen-fixing plants, one of the biggest problems in agriculture right now is that we lack nitrogen. So we buy high nitrogen fertilizers, and most of that nitrogen is coming from the byproduct of the petroleum industry in our food. That's what we're using to get nitrogen in the soil, from byproduct of the petroleum industry. When, wait a minute, we did this for thousands of years before humans were around. We didn't need petroleum to grow our food. So in the natural system, we have nitrogen fixing plants. And what they do, the nitrogen fixing plants, is, do you know what? Are you into chemistry at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
So the air is made up of mostly nitrogen.
Right? It's only like 70%. 21% oxygen or something.
Right. 70% of the air is nitrogen. Right. So now if we could only figure out a way to get the nitrogen out of the air and get into the soil, we'd be incredibly set, right? Well, we have. And that's through nitrogen fixing plants. Nitrogen fixing plants have they have these root nodules, and there's this microbacteria in the soil that have a symbiotic relationship with those root nodules that literally the plant takes in the nitrogen through its vascular system, brings it down to its roots where it meets this microbacteria at its root tips that then bring the nitrogen out of the plant and into the soil. Now you see why I'm saying hallelujah. It's freaking amazing. And anywhere you go in the world, whether it's like in an abandoned lot in Venice or you go into a primary forest in Brazil, you're always going to find a high concentration of nitrogen fixing plants. Some of them will be NFTs, which we call nitrogen fixing trees. When the whole NFT thing came out, I was like, wait, everybody's talking about nitrogen fixing trees. Then you have nitrogen fixing shrubs. You have nitrogen fixing vines. You have nitrogen fixing ground covers. So it's pretty amazing that nature's perfect. And that's something that permaculture really does, is we want to design these thriving, human systems that are based on natural systems, that are based on forests.
Is part of this about letting go a little bit and kind of, you just said there, nature's perfect. So, I mean, to some degree, because land is so degraded, it needs some redirection and people to come in. But it seems to me that if we stop dominating land so much, the natural world is kind of, its default is to create a better world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all it's trying to do.
Which is the mindset shift there is almost trying to do less.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Do less, be more. Do less, be more. Yeah.
More hammock time.
More hammock time.
Are we eating this?
Yeah. You ready?
Yeah.
So you kind of are going to take it. You're going to scrape it off the beautiful little skeleton that it has. Seed in the middle. Come on, let me hear you. Let me hear you. It's really good, right? This is tamarind.
That is good.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, it's like nature's candy, It's like, and what's so funny is they make all these crazy candies out of it, but it's already like a perfect candy. It doesn't need anything. Now this one.
Where's that come from?
The tamarind is from India.
From India.
Yeah, but they grow it all over. Mexico, it's all over. Mexico, they mostly make like tart candies out of it. In India, they mostly make chutneys out of it and sauces out of it. And then these.
Okay, yeah, I can see a chutney being made out of
these
that.
These are grafted, selected trees, and these are selected to be sweet. So when we talk about plants, like if you were to take 1,000 rambutan seeds, you would get 1,000 different varieties of rambutan. Now, some are going to be better than others. Like tamarind, some are going to be really sour and not a lot of fruit, not a lot of flesh. But over time, that's why I'm so excited. Right now is a time that's never been, is people are selecting the most incredible, like there's never been any time like this where you can get right now, probably online, 20 different varieties of grafted tamarind trees. It's amazing. Delivered to your door. So it's so exciting. This here is a dragon fruit, and this is a yellow dragon fruit. You said you've seen a lot the red one, which is really beautiful, but it's usually kind of tasteless. It's not that good.
These are kind of everywhere in Bali.
So these yellow ones are native to Colombia. Now, both of them come from a vining cactus. Did you know that?
Oh.
It comes from a cactus, a vining cactus. And this yellow one here, let me go over here for a second. First one.
Oh, so it's still like that spotted.
Still,
Look, it looks pretty much exactly the same on the inside.
Go in there, man. It's so much better than anyone you've had. It's so delicious. So exciting. And again, this is just over time selecting better. Oh, look at that. Are you kidding me? It's gorgeous. So good.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to admit that these are everywhere, but they don't carry a lot of flavor.
They're just pretty. They're cool to have on your fruit salad. Yeah. Let's go with lychee. I mean, so these right here are all in the same family.
This one's not ripe.
That's not ripe, so we can't eat it. That's a cherimoya. But I was telling you, I was talking about the other one, Annona salzmani is a relative of the cherimoya. The cherimoya is native to the Andes, high tropics, highland tropics. So that's why you can grow them here or in Santa Barbara, is because it's high. The thing is about the tropics is every 100 meters you go up is like 1 degree away from the equator. So when you get up in the highland tropics, it's like being subtropical or like low temperate. Right. So that's why you can grow them here.
Which kind of looks similar to a custard
apple. Same family. Custard apple is Annona reticulata. So these three fruits right here, this is longan, this is rambutan, and this is lychee, and they're all in the same family, Sapindaceae.
Okay.
I love Sapindaceae.
What's the first one?
The first one's longan. Let's start with that. And that means in China, it means dragon's eye. So give it a little pop.
Yeah, I learned for the first time the other day a kiwi fruit. I believe the Chinese original name is macaque peach.
A macaw peach.
Macaw peach.
Yeah. Seed in the middle. How's that flavor?
Is it a macaw monkey or a macaque?
I don't know. But that's an interesting thing. Kiwi's native to China. Nobody knows that. Everybody thinks it's from New Zealand.
Right.
And the other thing about kiwi is that 35 years ago, nobody heard of them. They were like a wild vine from China.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, you know what the most interesting thing about kiwi is? The shelf life. You pick a kiwi and you can eat it, 3 months later and it's just as good. So amazing, right? Oh, they are so good, the longans. And then lychee. At Burning Man, I did this one thing one year. Well, I do it every year. I always bring a lot of lychees and longans to Burning Man. But not this year, but last year, I brought 50 pounds. And I was going around one night. I saw this guy that was looking really bummed. And I walked over to him and I was like, "Hey, brother, you've been chosen." He was like, "Hey, what?" I was like, "Yeah, come here." And I walk up to him. And I'm like, and I pop a lychee in his mouth, and who knows what he was on, and I said, "Man, just feel the subtropical sun and rains of southern China. Like, really savor that flavor." And the guy's just like, "Oh my God." And he has this literally outer body experience with the fruit. And it was so amazing, watching his just reaction. Here, this random guy came in and just popped a fruit in his mouth. He probably never had a lychee. Maybe he had a lychee martini, which comes from a can. And I was like, "All right, brother, now it's your choice. Now it's your turn. Look around the party. You choose the next person. You tell me who you think the next person that needs it is.
Pay it forward."
And so I said, take a minute. Don't rush. I don't have a lot of them. So take it. I had a sack in my back. Anyway, the guy looks around. He chooses, maybe that girl right over there. So we walk over together. I'm like, "Hey, you've been chosen." And I create this whole fruit ceremony with her. And she's just like, "Whoa." And it's like, "Yeah, this guy chose you. Now it's your turn to choose someone." Meanwhile, all these couples started because of it. These two guys end up hooking up who chose each other. And by the end of the night, I was at parties where literally everyone had gone there. And it's just it was such a powerful just example of something so simple like a fruit could literally connect you to divine, and connect you to creation and connect you to this magical time that we're living in. And it doesn't matter who you are, you get to eat this abundance, and that's why when I think about Vietnam or I think about countries that are so, financially poor, yet so rich, and I feel like this genetic revolution that's happening with plants right now. And then being able to merge, all of this just incredible genetics into, Bitty Bitty in Uganda, the refugee camp, or, in these communities that we're starting. I feel like.
You think you'll go back to the Uganda camp?
I do. I haven't been to the Uganda camp yet, but my friend Mike Zuckerman and our friend Brian Harris, who runs Noxon's nonprofit, we're in big conversations about starting to set up the nurseries there and collecting all these genetics so we can bring them there. Yeah, these are exciting times, and everybody deserves to eat these fruits, and everybody deserves to, to taste God and just to feel the nurturing that this planet wants to do for us. It's like we are so loved. We are so cared for. She's got us. She's holding us, and we just have to listen and feel it.
And love her back.
Love her back.
Should we crack that rambutan?
Yes.
Come on. I'm not letting you get out of here without trying that.
So good. I mean, look at the gorgeousness of this. Are you kidding me? Which of the three do you like the best?
I think it's a tie. What were these called?
Longan.
The longan and the rambutan.
So good. People say, what are your favorite fruit? I often say the one in my hand. So blessed.
Bit down on the pip. I used to go and get lychees with my dad.
In Byron Bay.
This is when I was like 15 years old. This is north of Byron, in the kind of Gold Coast hinterlands. 45 minutes driving.
Amazing.
Delicious lychees.
Yeah, Ryex's dad is a big plant collector up
Really?
there. He's got a big collection of fruits. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So blessed.
We could just keep talking for days, dude.
Oh, about fruits for sure, man. Oh my God. And sometimes Andrea, my partner, will be with me and we'll like bump into another fruit nerd and like we'll just start talking and she will just like, or she'll hear me on the phone. Like I have a couple of people that I'll talk to like a few times a year and we'll just talk for 3 hours. Like they're giving me the updates of their orchards and I'm giving them updates of mine and we're just sharing knowledge. And she'll just like, you guys are nuts. No, baby, we're fruit.
If you were fruit, what fruit would you be?
Maybe a rambutan. I mean, they are really just so sexy. They're so beautiful. So hairy and sexy and beautiful.
Yeah. I don't know. They look a little spiky from the outside.
Yeah, but they're kind of soft.
They are soft. You know what? I can see it.
Yeah.
And when I think of Stephen Brooks, I think the word that comes to mind is huggable.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
You just want to hug this man. Thank you, Stephen. This has been really cool. I think the most inspiring thing for me is seeing someone who is so clearly on a mission to leave the people in your radius and people on the other side of the world and the planet in a better place. And that's a very simple thing, but to make that your mission and to kind of lead by example and pursue that mission for 30 plus years is very inspiring.
Thank you, brother. So good to be here. I'm
Yeah.
so glad we made it happen.
I'm glad we made it happen and appreciate everything that you're doing and just so grateful to be on this journey with you.
Thanks, brother.
There you have it, friends. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did and want to stay up to date with future episodes, be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow on Apple or Spotify. Finally, thank you for showing up and the effort that you're making to take control of your health. I look forward to hanging out with you again in the next episode.